Chosen ones, wake up, rise up, and remember who you are. This isn't just another moment. This is your moment. You're not here by accident. You were built different, called higher, and covered by something this world can't touch. You've been through fire that should have taken you out, but you're still standing, stronger, wiser, and more dangerous to the darkness than ever before. Let's get one thing straight. Anyone who tries to come for you isn't just picking a fight. They're making the biggest mistake of their lives. Why? Because when someone tries to break you, they're not just messing with flesh and blood. They're colliding with purpose, power, and protection straight from the throne. You're not just protected, you're backed. And the moment someone dares to target you, they trigger a chain reaction they'll never be able to stop. You are chosen. Not perfect, not flawless, but chosen. That means every setback, every betrayal, every storm you've survived was never the end. It was fuel. You don't have to chase revenge, because divine justice has already marked the ones who tried to dim your light. Spoiler alert, they're about to watch you rise in ways they never saw coming. So buckle up, because this isn't just content, this is confirmation. You didn't stumble here, you were led. And what's about to unfold will remind you why you're not just part of the story. You are the shift. Let's get into it. What they hurl outward doesn't vanish. It evolves. It doesn't dissolve into thin air. It circulates, expands, and returns with a velocity they never anticipated. Malice doesn't just fade when it's flung toward those walking under unseen protection. It twists into something sharper, heavier, and more volatile. They believe they're launching attacks, but they're only priming a storm that's set to sweep back over them with merciless precision. The universe isn't silent in the face of imbalance. It recalibrates with intensity. And when the intended target stands under unseen shielding, that correction comes not gradually, but with a sudden and overwhelming shift. This isn't a quiet pushback. It's a surge. The negativity they project carries pieces of their inner disarray, fragments of fear, bitterness, insecurity. When it returns, it's not just the same energy, it's a mirror of their own fractured state, now multiplied. They aren't dismantling their enemy, they're unearthing their own ruin. The more they focus on breaking another, the more they unravel themselves. Their attempts at sabotage ignite a sequence of collapse they can't halt. It's not retribution, it's an echo amplified. And while they wrestle with the fallout, the ones they tried to shake keep moving forward, untouched by the wreckage left behind. Don't just watch, be part of the movement. Hit subscribe and step into your purpose. Your journey starts now. No weapon formed against you shall prosper. Isaiah 54:17. Now picture this. You're not just walking through life. You're walking with a covering, like a vault, sealed by heaven itself. You don't always see it, but it's there. A divine surveillance system, wired straight into the spirit realm, watching, listening, tracking everything. And here's the thing. When you're chosen, when you're marked, when heaven has stamped its fingerprint on your life, you're not fighting your battles alone. You're not even fighting in the way they think. You see, God doesn't operate like man. He doesn't show up late. He doesn't forget. He doesn't miss a detail. While they're scheming, he's measuring. While they're plotting, he's positioning. And by the time they make their move, they don't realize they've already walked straight into the framework of their own collapse. That's the precision of divine justice. It doesn't flail. It doesn't swing wild. It cuts right through, exactly where it needs to. Some folks think they're laying traps for you, digging pits, weaving lies, pulling strings behind closed doors. But what they don't know is every stroke of their plan is being used to draw the blueprint of their own undoing. They think they're writing your ending, but heaven's been authoring their consequence the whole time. And when it hits, it doesn't come with fireworks. It comes in layers. Their peace evaporates, their influence slips, their confidence fades. That empire they built on ego and deception, it starts to cave from the inside out. Don't worry about defending yourself, chosen one. You don't have to clap back. You don't have to prove a thing. Just keep walking in alignment. Keep doing what you are called to do. The most powerful thing you can do is stay in position. Because when God moves, He doesn't miss. He hits where it matters. And when the dust settles, they'll realize it wasn't you they came up against. It was the hand of the one who never loses. So hold your head high. You're not just protected, you're untouchable for a reason. There are some who carry a current so pure, it scrambles every signal built on deceit the moment they walk into the room. They don't chase conflict, yet disruption follows them. Not as chaos, but as clarity. Surfaces crack, masks slip, and illusions dissolve. Not because they speak against it, but because their presence alone shifts the atmosphere. It's not a gift they requested, nor a role they rehearsed. It's simply embedded in their essence. Those who hide behind pretense feel exposed without warning, as if standing in front of a mirror that refuses to lie. And for those clinging to power, fueled by envy or control, this reflection feels unbearable. Their attempts to lash out don't land the way they expect. Instead of damage, they trigger collapse from within. Each calculated move against this force ends up activating their own internal unraveling. They aren't up against opposition in the way they assume. They're confronting a resonance they can't mimic or mute. Their efforts backfire not because of retaliation, but because their tactics are incompatible with what they're targeting. The deeper their obsession grows, the more unstable their foundations become. They throw stones expecting to break something, but end up cracking the fragile world they built around themselves. And while they spiral trying to regain control, the one they aimed at continues unaffected, quietly shifting the whole field just by being there. There are those who turn their attention so fully toward another that they abandon their own reflection entirely. What begins as quiet comparison slowly mutates into fixation, spreading like a silent infestation through the corners of their thoughts. It doesn't announce itself. It creeps in. A glance becomes a grudge. A thought becomes a craving. Before they realize it, their days revolve not around purpose, but around sabotage. They don't build, they stalk. They don't grow, they monitor. And in doing so, they lose the very thread of their own existence. The deeper they sink into obsession, the further they drift from anything resembling peace. Every ounce of effort poured into trying to unravel someone else becomes a thread pulling at the seams of their own sanity. The target of their obsession continues on, steady and untouchable, while they fracture under the weight of their own preoccupation. In their minds, they are battling a rival, but in reality, they're just digging a hole they can't climb out of. Nothing nourishes them anymore, not joy, not rest, not connection, because they've emptied themselves in pursuit of a shadow. What consumes them is not the other person's success, but their inability to look away. Their world narrows, suffocates, and eventually implodes. What they aimed outward loops back inward, turning their own thoughts into weapons. And by the time they grasp what's happening, they're too entangled in it to escape. The collapse isn't sudden. It's a slow erasure, caused by a war they waged against someone who never even stepped onto the battlefield. Some believe they're executing the perfect ambush, when in truth, they're moving through a maze that was built around them from the very start. There's a higher intelligence at play, one that doesn't just shield the innocent, but choreographs every twist of the story so that each misstep taken by those with dark intent becomes part of their own collapse. They don't recognize the setup because it's quiet. It doesn't shout or resist. It waits. It observes. It lets them climb high on ladders they think they built, unaware that the ground beneath them is already hollowed out. Every calculated betrayal, every covert move, every masked attack is allowed, not to succeed, but to lead them exactly where they're meant to fall. They misread silence as weakness and the absence of resistance as opportunity. Emboldened by their small victories, they overlook the subtle signs all around them, patterns breaking, things unraveling, warnings they refuse to read. They continue forward, thinking the path is clear, not realizing it was designed to collapse under their next step. What seems like their rise is only a lead-up to exposure. Their alliances fracture, their plans implode, and their certainty crumbles with it. It doesn't hit like thunder, it breaks like ice under pressure. And while they're buried under the weight of consequences they set in motion, the one they targeted emerges untouched, elevated, and untouched by the wreckage. This isn't just about defense, it's about demonstration. A statement is made without words. No scheme can outwit a force that sees the whole game before the first piece moves. They often mistake stillness for vulnerability, believing they're moving against someone unarmed. What escapes their understanding is the presence of unseen architecture, layers of unseen fortification woven into the very fabric of the person they try to target. These barriers aren't visible to the eye or measurable by force. They respond before danger takes shape, neutralizing threats before they even gain momentum. The resistance they encounter isn't accidental. It's embedded, instinctual, and ever-present. There's a core resilience that was never learned, only carried, something passed down through quiet strength and divine alignment. It's not a reaction, it's a constant presence. Paths bend, moments shift, and outcomes reroute, not by chance, but through alignment with something far larger than any plot could disrupt. What roots this protection goes beyond the present. It echoes from generations past, planted long ago through quiet declarations and spiritual foundation. That foundation holds firm no matter how relentless the opposition becomes. Their confusion grows each time their attempts collapse, as if the very ground tilts out from under their feet. They can't identify the source of the resistance, so they blame luck or timing, never realizing they're clashing with forces designed to absorb and dissolve harm before it arrives. Each failed move leaves them more exposed, not because their aim is off, but because their weapons were never capable of piercing what was never theirs to touch. What infuriates them most is the silence, the way everything falls apart without a fight. But the truth is, they were never fighting one person. They were struggling against a fortress hidden in plain sight. They misjudge the weight of their actions, thinking they're simply targeting an individual, when in truth, they're crossing into territory that was never theirs to touch. This isn't just conflict, it's trespass on grounds governed by higher order. What they confront isn't just flesh and blood, but something set apart by a presence they can't comprehend. To step against such a presence is to defy boundaries etched in dimensions far beyond human grasp. There's a distinction carved into the fabric of those set apart, an unseen seal that doesn't fade or weaken with time. That seal commands recognition in realms they can't perceive, and yet they storm in as if they're breaking barriers with impunity. What they don't realize is that such acts call judgment upon themselves, not by the hand of the one they attack, but by the power that surrounds them. Their arrogance blinds them to the rules already written. They think they're navigating open space when they're actually triggering consequences with every move. This isn't punishment by accident, it's precision. Everything they treasure begins to shift and fall apart. Their clarity, their confidence, their connections. The more they press forward, the more they're undone by their own overreach. They thought they were confronting weakness, but they walked into a zone fortified by forces that don't negotiate. Violating that space demands a reckoning, and it doesn't delay. Their downfall isn't just a response, it's a correction, a reset triggered the moment they tried to desecrate what was never meant to be within their reach. Don't just watch, be part of the movement. Hit subscribe and step into your purpose. Your journey starts now. They rarely notice when it starts, only that something feels off. What once brought them comfort begins to stir with unease. But they shrug it off, unaware that the unraveling has already begun. This type of undoing doesn't arrive like a crash. It creeps in quietly, peeling back stability layer by layer until there's nothing left to hold on to. The first fracture always strikes where it can't be seen, within. Restlessness replaces rest, silence turns into mental noise, and every moment feels like something is slipping just out of reach. That inner disquiet is the first sign, subtle but relentless. Then comes the slow dissolving of bonds they thought were unshakable. Trust begins to erode in the people around them. Conversations become distant. Connections grow thin. The familiar warmth of relationships turns cold, and suddenly, the spaces once filled with loyalty and closeness feel vacant. No amount of control can stop it, because the collapse is deeper than circumstance. It's structural. And just when they begin to grasp the cost, the weight shifts again. The body begins to carry the damage. Fatigue, affliction, and imbalanced surface, and the pressure they've tried to ignore finds a new place to live, within their own skin. And with it, the final blow lands quietly but brutally, the erosion of legacy. What was once their pride, titles, recognition, image, begins to dull. The echo of their influence fades until they become the forgotten architect of their own fall. Each stage strips away another illusion, another layer of false security. Not all punishment roars, some of it whispers until the silence is deafening. By the time they recognize the full weight of what's unfolded, the damage has already rooted too deep to undo. They believe that pushing harder will bend fate in their favor, unaware that every ounce of effort spent resisting what's already been written only sharpens the edge of their own consequences. What they think is control is actually chaos in disguise. The more they maneuver, the more entangled they become, each move drawing them closer to collapse. They don't see that the path they're charging down isn't leading them to triumph, but trapping them in a spiral of their own making. It's not just missteps they're making, it's self-inflicted erosion. Their resistance isn't just failing, it's turning on them. What they perceive as strategy is actually sabotage in motion. The more they try to manipulate the outcome, the more fragmented their inner world becomes. Restlessness grows, stability fades. Everything they once held together begins to fall apart, piece by piece. They lose clarity, they lose connection, and eventually, they lose control. Not because they're weak, but because they chose to fight against something far stronger than themselves. This isn't about punishment, It's about the inevitability of misalignment. The further they stretch away from what was meant to stand, the more it pulls them into collapse. The irony is brutal. Every attempt to dismantle what's protected only dismantles them. The harder they push against the current, the faster they're swept under. They don't realize they're not fighting an opponent. They're fighting inevitability. And in that battle, there's only one outcome. They charge forward with the illusion that they're up against flesh, as if dismantling a person could secure their victory. But what they're truly contending with isn't visible, and it doesn't yield to force. Their arrogance blinds them to the scale of what they've provoked. This isn't a skirmish between equals. It's a collision between fleeting schemes and an immovable design that predates their first breath. The moment they decided to strike, they stepped into a realm where their weapons are useless. They think they're advancing through clever tactics and silent attacks, but each move only reveals how far they are from understanding the battlefield they've entered. They believe the target is standing alone, unaware that behind what they see lies a current of power too vast to measure. The resistance they meet isn't reaction, it's orchestration. Every obstacle they encounter, every failure they can't explain, every plan that crumbles mid-execution, it's all the echo of something greater, pushing back without ever being seen. They're not being outwitted, they're being overruled. Their struggle isn't against someone in their way, it's against a momentum they cannot disrupt. They think they're plotting against a person, but what they've done is place themselves in opposition to a blueprint that won't bend. And in that defiance, they've sentenced themselves to defeat. Not because they weren't strong, but because they never understood who or what they were really fighting. There are those who unknowingly ignite change by merely standing in their truth. Their presence doesn't demand transformation. It evokes it. Without speaking a word, they disturb the silence within others, stirring what's long been buried beneath layers of self-deception. It's not an effort, it's an effect. Their authenticity acts like pressure on a hidden fault line, disrupting false narratives, unraveling facades, and bringing suppressed truths to the surface. For some, this disruption becomes the very moment they've been needing, the chance to realign, to repair, to become. That encounter, however uncomfortable, acts as a doorway to clarity. But for others, the exposure is too sharp. The confrontation with what they've refused to face creates panic instead of progress. Instead of adapting, they resist. Instead of healing, they hide deeper. Their systems crack under the weight of what has been revealed, and they spiral. Not because they were attacked, but because they were shown too much truth too quickly. Regardless of how it plays out, the encounter leaves an imprint. The energy they met disrupted the normal flow of their lives, leaving everything they thought was stable now trembling. Whether they rise from it or fall beneath it, they are changed. It's impossible to go back to sleep once you've seen what lives in your shadow. And those who carry that rare current don't do so to impress or invade. They simply exist, and in doing so, shift every atmosphere they enter. They operate under the illusion that momentum equals permanence, as if moving undetected means they've escaped accountability. But what they overlook is that timing itself is sacred, and it doesn't bend to strategy. The flow of justice isn't rushed, but it isn't idle either. It's deliberate, exact, and unshakable. Their temporary success is just that, temporary. What they mistake for dominance is simply the pause before the tide shifts. While they carry on as if they've outpaced consequence, the truth is that they've already walked into an outcome that was set long before their schemes began. Their downfall isn't denied, it's delayed. But delay is not denial. its placement. They're being allowed to move freely, not because they're invincible, but because the precise moment has not yet arrived. And when it does, it won't be subtle or slow. It will strike with the kind of clarity that leaves no space for denial. No mask will hold. No excuse will stand. The same hands that wrote the order have also written the hour, and when that hour comes, it will not wait for their permission. The longer they test the silence, the more violent the echo becomes. Every lie, every manipulative move, every false elevation they celebrated is being recorded, not to shame them publicly, but to ensure that when the scales tip, they tip completely. There is no partial reckoning. What has been sown must be reaped, and the ground will not delay the harvest forever. Their mistake wasn't in what they did, it was in believing they'd have time to undo it. But when divine alignment activates, the correction arrives like a locked gate behind them, firm, final, and impossible to reopen. They misread your silence as weakness, your peace as vulnerability. What they don't grasp is that your path is safeguarded by forces not born of this world. This story isn't about retaliation or defense, it's about alignment. Those who move against you aren't confronting a person. They're stumbling into a current far more powerful than anything they've ever known. They see you as a target, not realizing they've already become a warning. The harder they resist, the quicker they unravel. Every move they make only hastens what was already written. Your power has never been about fighting fire with fire. It's in your stillness, in your unwavering commitment to the assignment on your life. You don't have to lift a hand or speak a curse. What surrounds you speaks louder than anything you could say. That unshakable presence, that invisible force guiding your steps, is what they can't touch. And that's what unsettles them most. The very energy they try to break ends up breaking them. Some will encounter your presence and awaken. Others will crumble under the weight of their own choices. Either way, no one leaves unchanged. Crossing paths with someone chosen isn't incidental, it's catalytic. And the protection over you isn't passive. It is watchful, responsive, and absolute. Let them try. Let them push. Let them test what cannot be moved. In the end, what they believe to be the start of your fall is only the evidence of their own undoing. If this message stirred something within you, take a moment to follow, share it with those who may need this truth, and drop your thoughts below. This space isn't just for reflection, it's for connection, growth, and strength. We're walking this journey together, and you're never alone in it. May your season be filled with clarity, renewal, and unstoppable peace. Here's to new beginnings, greater alignment, and walking boldly into everything that's already yours. Stay rooted, stay rising. The next chapter is already unfolding, and it's yours to step into.